At the National Equity Project, we believe that every child in America deserves the right to a quality education. And we coach the people to become the leaders who deliver and make good on that promise. That's who we are. The National Equity Project has learned a few lessons over this 15-year period about what it takes to do this work over time. And I'm going to offer just 2 of those lessons to you tonight. The first is that what we deeply believe is that a different form of leadership is required. You've heard us reference it already. We talk about it as leadership for equity. And the second is that we must change the conversation that we are having in this country about the problems that face public education to include the community. So, I got some more. So as a leadership development organization, we have been gathering a collective testimony about the power of ordinary people to create extraordinary change. And in this region, we have seen entire educational landscapes be transformed. Our coaching and technical support has resulted in the development of over 50 small schools in this region. It has, thank you, clap it up. There's some small school leaders in this room right now, right? It has also resulted in over 2,000, resulted in the development of over 2,000 teacher leaders, parent leaders, and district leaders. And it has resulted in some dramatic changes in the educational experiences for children. But the common denominator about all of that work, the common denominator has been leadership. And it's been the collective efforts of men and women who've been willing to align their daily actions with their most deeply held values and aspirations. So our definition of leadership is really deceptively simple. At the National Equity Project, we say that leadership means taking responsibility for what matters to you. The result of this kind of leadership is not magic, but sometimes it works like it. So if you consider what you heard from the leaders who were just on the screen, their stories involved some things. Their stories involved telling the truth about what is and what is not working. Their stories involve understanding the role that oppression and bias actually play, the effect of those things on children and on adults in the building. They involve building relationships and collaborating across difference. They involve actually providing some spaces for people to do some healing so that they might think more clearly about the actions that they're going to take. And they involve listening. Listening to the fears and the aspirations of the community that they serve. So we're not going to submit that leadership for equity is easy, only that it's possible. We know that for those of you who are sitting in this office who lead every day, that there's often no acknowledgement waiting for you at home, no rewards at the end of the day. In fact, it's actually more common that at the end of your day, somebody is upset, disappointed, they've disagreed, and they might have actually even disrespected you at some point during the day, right? So we know this is not work for the faint at heart, right? Creating equitable school systems require increased will, increased skill, increased knowledge, and we'd argue some emotional intelligence in order to get it done over the long haul, right? And our Leading for Equity programs are designed to help build those capacities. But I'll remind you here that we are not just talking about the actions of individual people. We're talking about the collective action that people have to take to get this job done. Margaret Wheatley reminds us that despite current ads and slogans, and more recently the media, the world doesn't change one person at a time. The world changes when networks of relationships are formed by committed people who have a common cause and a vision about what's possible. There's been much conversation about closing the achievement gap, right? A whole lot of talk about closing the achievement gap. But talking about the problems of student learning and performance in this way has focused us very narrowly on a couple of things. On standardized tests, on fixing kids and punishing teachers. Right? And in all the 10 years of NCLB and the commitment to close the achievement gap and the vow to not leave any child behind, the performance of Black, brown, and poor children all across this country has remained largely unchanged. So that conversation about closing the achievement gap has been an incomplete one. All of the emphasis on the gap has belied a more fundamental truth, that there are opportunity gaps in this country for children who live in poverty. Now, because you all work in these communities, you already know that, right? Schools are nested in communities. And when your zip code and your income level and the distance to the closest grocery store or library or hospital become predictors of whether or not you can be academically successful, and for some of our children in some of our neighborhoods, even predictors of your life expectancy, then you know that a deeper conversation is needed.